Hello, my name is Brady Bonner. I'll be going over management, operational, and technical controls for iBank Financial. First, we'll start with the PCI-DSS standards. What PCI standards does iBank Financials need to address? They need to address almost all of the 12 guidelines for PCI-DSS. They need to install and maintain a firewall. They need to ensure that their systems do not use any of the vendor-supplied defaults. They need to protect stored cardholder data. They also need to encrypt transmission of cardholder data across open and public networks. They do use VPNs when working away from the office, so in some instances they do appear to be adhering to that. They also need to protect all systems against malware and regularly update antivirus software. They need to develop and maintain a secure system and applications. They need to restrict access to cardholder data by business need to know only. They need to identify and authenticate access to system components. They need to restrict physical access to network resources and cardholder data. They need to track and monitor all access to network resources and cardholder data. They also need to regularly test security systems and processes and maintain a policy that addresses information security to all personnel. What are 3 things from PCI-DSS which need to be prioritized? The 3 that I chose were Requirement 1, to install and maintain a firewall. Requirement 7, restricting access to cardholder data by business need to know. And Requirement 10, track and monitor all access to network resources and cardholder data. One of the first things that need to be addressed is the lack of a firewall. From the information that we have, there is no indication that they are currently using a firewall. Data at rest, it does need to be protected and stored behind a firewall per the PCI-DSS. We do know that they are using a VPN when they're working remotely. This does protect the data in transit and on public and open wireless networks. Something else that needs to be addressed is that we need to restrict access to cardholder data by business need to know. Users should only have access to the data that they need to complete their job. They should not have access to any more information than is necessary, because unnecessary access to any additional information creates a risk to that cardholder information. Accesses should be very carefully considered and based on the need of the individual to know. In situations where you're dealing with customer support, they don't necessarily need access to a customer's payment information, whereas the sales team may actually need information to complete a sale. We also need to track and monitor all access to network resources and cardholder data. All usage of the network resources needs to be monitored thoroughly. The data collected as part of this monitoring could be used in cases of audits, access reviews, and any situation where a security event occurs. If an employee is granted more access than is necessary, we can also see from these logs if those were used improperly. What are some ways that we can address these concerns for PCI-DSS requirements? A few ways that we can address these would be using controls like 1.1.4, install and maintain a firewall, 7.1.2, limit access to system components and cardholder data, and 10.3, document required audit trail entries. When we're installing and maintaining a firewall, we need to determine the solution that would work best, whether it's hardware or software firewall. We need to install the selected solution at each of the required points of connections. This would be between our network and the internet, as well as between any DMZ and local networks. We need to configure our firewalls properly and ensure that we are not using the vendor-provided defaults. We can test our firewall implementation by doing regular scans with tools like Nmap, Netcat. We can also do packet capture and analysis with tools like Wireshark, and many firewalls will have built-in solutions for monitoring traffic and analyzing packets in and out of the network. We can also hire penetration testers or services which provide penetration testing to ensure that we have no vulnerabilities on our firewall and network. And we can monitor the traffic in and out using the firewall itself, as many firewalls do have built-in monitoring solutions. We can also address some of our access concerns by performing regular access reviews and ensuring that only the necessary accesses are given at the time of account provisioning. We also need to ensure that we are adhering to the principles of least privilege and providing only the necessary access to each account that is created or when a job changes. We also need to regularly review the roles that we are providing and ensure that they fit the responsibilities of the jobs the individuals who have them are doing. A lot of the testing for account access will involve reviews. We will need to review IT's account provisioning procedures and ensure that all assigned access is appropriate for each role. We can ensure all access policies and procedures are also very thoroughly documented, as in the event of an audit or security event, we will need to know how accounts are created and what the process for provisioning access is. For 10.3 document required audit trail entries, we need to ensure that in our logs we are documenting the user identification, the type of event that is occurring. It will need to have a date and a time stamp, and we will need to include success or failure indication of the event, the origination of the event, and information about the accessed resource, system, or component, and the identity or name of the affected data. Since Windows Server and many other operating systems allow for thoroughly detailed logs, we need to ensure that our servers are configured to log all of the required information and periodically review those logs. There are also some concerns that we need to address for the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. First, we need to ensure that we know all of the collected customer information that we have. We also need to have documentation ready showing all customers are aware of the data we collect and how we use it. We also need to include in this documentation the education on the privacy rights that the customers have under the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. They also have rights to limit the sharing of this information, and they need to be informed of that. These documents will also be provided to customers at regular intervals, and anytime there's a change to any of the policies surrounding the usage of their collected data, we need to update those documents and send them out again. This is important because it is a requirement of the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act that customers are notified of any kinds of data that we collect and their privacy rights under the Act. Next, we need to conduct a security risk assessment. This will let us know if there are any kind of risks to our customers' information, both internal or external. The document would also outline what is considered an acceptable level of risk and what countermeasures and response policies are in place. The assessments would ideally be done semi-annually or quarterly. We need to be aware of these risks, and it is very important to our customers' information that we are good stewards of that information. We also need to create an incident response plan to be used in the occurrence of a security event. These would outline the processes which go into place in response to an incident. We would identify those members who would make up the response team, what their roles were in that team, and we would outline internal and external communications which needed to be handled swiftly and responsibly. We need to plan out how different situations are remedied, short-term, and process to fix any weaknesses exposed by the security event. Finally, we need to implement and develop training around the company's security policies and make them clear and easy to understand. Training empowers employees with the knowledge necessary to ensure customer information is handled with care and that they are able to recognize any threats to that information. We need to do a few things to ensure that we are compliant with the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. We also need a firewall installed, and it needs to be properly maintained. We would also use the same tools like Nmap and Wireshark, as well as the firewall itself, to inspect traffic across the network, as well as inbound and outbound traffic to ensure nothing is going wrong. We would also need to implement persistent training on how to recognize and protect against security threats. This would be done through a series of training that occur on a regular basis to prove that employees understand the training, and it would be an excellent tool to ensure that personnel are aware of the importance of protecting customer information. We would also want to review whether any of the service providers that we use are also compliant with the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. We would probably need to engage a third-party company to perform these reviews on third-party vendors.